Hello, I think I'm live now. Hopefully there's no delay now. And yeah, let's go briefly over Tihon's game. But before I do that, I see empty since 1959 asking in the chat, I wonder if King C8 was a mouse leap. I don't think it was a mouse leap. And the reason why, maybe it was. I mean, that was the first feeling I had when I saw the move is, oh, that's a mouse leap. Because it felt like my opponent wanted to castle long. On the other hand, castling long would also hang the a5 pawn. So in that sense, hey Karmar, in that sense it's like, oh yeah, no, it was on purpose, king c8, because you cannot actually castle. But now that you say it, it may be the case that you think and then you think again and, you make a mouse leap just because you grabbed your king. And then you're like, oh no, I can't castle. I can castle. And then you mouse leaped it to so yeah, maybe there's some chances for it to be a mouse leap, but on the other hand, it makes sense that he wanted to defend b7 without castling because castling just hangs this pawn immediately. So I don't know. We should ask my opponent. Anyway, let's watch Tihon's game today because he was playing a super GM today. And apparently he did great, right? So yeah, he's playing in the 25th Open International Bavarian Championships, and it may be the first tournament when he is showing a title, right? He's an FM now, and this was round 4. But let me have a quick look at the results. Oh, he was CM before, yeah. Okay, as a real title. You know what I mean? But yeah, good point. Yeah, he was CM before. True. Okay, so this is the starting rank. In the starting rank, Tihon was like 30 something, maybe. Here he is, 40. 40 in the starting rankings. It's a very strong tournament. You can see a lot of strong players there, and you can't see the bottom of my screen, can you? No, you can't see the bottom, which is unfortunately because I can't scroll anymore. I can't scroll anymore. Well, I can do this. This is going to be fun. I can inspect just to push it up. If I can put this at the bottom, there you go. Now I can scroll in a way that you can see this. Just don't look at the bottom. So Tihon made a draw on round 1. I think these are the ratings. Oh, it's rating international, rating national. So these are the FIDE ratings, I suppose. Yeah. So he drew first round against the 2000. Okay, maybe not the best result, but not a bad one. And then a victory and another victory, and the big fish here, Anton Dinchenko. That was today's game. He made a draw, and tomorrow he's getting paired against an 1800. Well, you can't just guess from the ratings what's the actual strength of the players. We don't know anything about them. Yeah, he got an 1800 tomorrow. That's the thing. You can't guess the real strength. You maybe, I don't know. I guess you have to look into things like how old is this guy, because some kids are very underrated and things like that. But on the other hand, Karmar's sad face makes a lot of sense because this is gonna bring Tihon's performance down. So it's not helping with the goals of making a norm based on rating. On the other hand, as I said, it's chances are this opponent is actually worthy, and it's much stronger than the rating says because amongst other things, 3.5 points so far. So yeah, actually he's got half a point more than Tihon right now. So Tihon, it's funny how Tihon is actually being paired with the next group up. So that's good, but but he's getting an 1800. That's bad. So very strong 1800, at least performance-wise. Now I'm curious. Let's see what his results were, because he's probably doing an incredible performance with 3.5. Um, yeah, okay, nothing super special. I mean, good, good, but not super impressive. I mean, it's doing maybe a 2000 performance, or well, a 2300 performance. Yeah, because he wins every game. Um, he drew the 2100. He beat the other 2100. So okay, the results are proper of a 21 2200. But I mean, it's not like he played GMs or IMs. That's what I mean, but not that impressive. But of course, it's impressive. It's a good. Uh, I mean, 3.5. It's not easy. Anyway, um, he's paired a group down because back acceleration is in place. Oh, there's an accelerated system. Oh, yeah, that's really unfortunate. That's really unfortunate. Let me. I'm not sure how the Baku acceleration works. I guess it's over already. Like the ratings have been, the points have been, uh, the handicap has been removed, because it is true that this guy has 3.5 points, um, and it is true that Tihon has 3 points. For the first 5 rounds, the top half players will get an extra virtual point for drawings. Yeah. Oh, I know. I get what you mean. I get what you mean then. So what you mean is Tihon has virtually 4 points, and so he's getting paired with someone with 3.5. So he's actually paired with the group down. Yeah, that makes sense. At the same time, that's very unfortunate. Yeah. Well, it is what it is. That's okay. So this is Tihon's profile in the tournament. He's doing an impressive performance, of course, after this draw, and the current rank is better than the starting rank. So doing well, doing well. We'll see where that ends. And yeah, let's have a look at the game. I only saw the opening, but I don't know how the game went overall. So let's have a quick look. I don't want to. Okay, I guess they're drawing a very early position, so that will help me, because I really want to do it quickly. Um, let me turn the engine off. I mean, the engine is off, but let me turn the bar off as well, which I think is like this. There you go. And we can keep the database on if you can't see it completely, but I can move my camera if you want to see the database, because we're going to talk about the opening a bit, maybe, just to make this slightly instructional. Okay, so Tihon with the white pieces, open with 1e4. I think, well, Karmar is following him more, he can confirm, but I think he's playing a lot of 1e4 lately, or am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, e4, best by test, why not? e5, knight f3. I mean, as you know, this is like half of the games in the elite. We can say they feature e5. Okay, maybe not half, but maybe 80% of the games feature either e5 and c5. So like the two main, and half. Although here on Lichess, you see more c5 than e5 in the masters database. I'm a bit puzzled about that, but this may be historical data. He's choosing the openings according to the opponent. Yeah, that's good. Um, yeah, I mean e5 and c5 are main opening. Nowadays, I would imagine there's more e5 than c5, but you know, with historical data, sometimes you get statistics that, well, they don't reflect the current trend. You need to take that into consideration. But yeah, e5 very very normal. And the thing is, after knight f3, knight c6, if white chooses to go bishop e5, which was not the case, and I think I've seen Tihon playing Rui Lopez before, but if you play bishop e5 against Super GM, chances are they're going to play the Berlin nowadays, and just chill. I mean, not chill, but very solid. So nowadays, many people are trying against the Berlin instead of the Berlin endgame. Many people are trying, anti-Berlin move orders like the exchange or um, D3 or many alternatives to the Berlin endgame. We're not going to go there. The other way grandmasters try to play for a wing is what Tihon did today, is to go bishop c4. You go for an Italian, which theoretically is not if you compare those lines in the classical Rui Lopez where the bishop ends up on c2 with those lines of the Italian where the bishop ends up on c2, it's arguable that in some of those lines you get uh, the same positions a tempo up in the Rui Lopez. So the Rui Lopez is comparatively better than the Italian in some specific lines. But on the other hand, there's other options for black, such as the Berlin, that makes it not as appealing to play for a wing. So yeah, very interesting. Anyway, e4, e5, always interesting. It's always going to be there. And we have an Italian, like a beginner's opening, right? This is what we're learn first, to put the pawn in the center, bring the knight out, bring the bishop out, castle next, checkmate on f7 if possible. Now this is an important point for black because I think I'm probably correct if I say 99% of the times, but yeah, let's say the vast majority of times, black will play bishop c6, bishop c5, followed by knight f6, or knight f6 followed by bishop c5. That's like, black is trying to do basically what white did and castle and, enjoy life. This is very symmetrical. Do I spoil something if I say there was no mate on f7 in this game? Yeah, I suppose there wasn't. And I don't think you spoiled anything. Anyway, yeah, my point is the most natural move for black is to develop the pieces to those squares, the bishop on c5, the knight on f6, if given the chance, castle. And so many games in the elite actually follow that. So you play bishop c5. Let's say I'm going to follow the main line in the database. c3, knight f6, right? What I just said. And now here, d3 is the main move. That would be like a normal Italian in the elite. And now d6, and both sides castle. There's some game here about, okay, I may delay castling to see if I push my pawns against your castle king or stuff like that. But the most natural way would be just castle and black again. Here, a6 is the main move, not castling. So you can play that game of, maybe I play h6, g5 and start attacking you rook g8. But most people castle, or castling is a very natural move as well. And after a6 also castle. So this is like sort of the standard Italian that there's a lot of game to play, of course, from this point on. And the only difference really between black and white is this c3 versus c6 squares, where white has more control of the center, but black has more development, a piece developed there. But this is very symmetrical. But let me go back to this point. The point I'm trying to make is here I did that with bishop c5 followed by knight f6. Now knight f6 is the other move that, as you can tell from the master's database, is also very common. And then after d3, let's say, which is the main move, I'm going to keep following the main lines. Then bishop e7 or bishop c5. But what I was trying to make an argument for bishop c5. You see bishop c5 only 4,900 games compared to this 5,400 for bishop e7. But if I put the move on the board, bishop c5, and now c3 only 3,000 games. But suddenly you see 5,000. See how the game, see how the number of games suddenly increased. 11,000 in total from this position. Let me go back for a second. You see, if I play c3, there's only 3,000 games, right? You see, if c3, 3,000 games. But if I put the move on the board, suddenly the total number of games is 11,000. How did that happen? Well, we transposed. That's how that happened. So yeah, bear transpositions in mind when you look into the database, because what this bump up proves is what I was just trying to say, that if you play bishop c5, knight f6, or if you play knight f6, bishop c5, you most likely will end up on the same position. They will transpose very likely, even following the main moves in the database. So that's what usually happens in the elite. Let me go back to this position in the game. This one. So what happens in the elite usually is if you go knight f6 first and bishop c5 next, you're gonna get to that kind of position. If you go bishop c5 first and knight f6 next, you're gonna get to that kind of position. So in principle, it doesn't matter which move you play here. However, there's just one tiny difference, is on each of those two ways, white can try something different instead of going for the main line. So basically here it's a choice of what do you allow white to play. This discussion is relevant because that's what happened in the game. So that's why I'm building up on all of this, and I hope it's instructional in some way. So if you go bishop c5, which did not happen in the game, you're basically opening the door for the Evans gambit. So again, white can go for c3, d3, castle, that kind of stuff, but white might decide to go for the Evans gambit before, using the fact that the bishop just landed on c5. So you go before, then, you know, the Evans gambit, lots of theory. White gets incredible development. Let's put on the board bishop a5, for example, one of the main moves. And d4 castles, let's go d4. And e takes d4 is normal. Castle. And knight g7. And hello, Flavio. Yeah, finally. I wanted to let's say knight f6, maybe. Bishop a3, d6. I'm trying to make a point, but I don't know how to make it. I wanted to make a point about this structure because in the line in the game we get the same structure with reverse colors, but it doesn't matter. This is the Evans gambit. No reason to go deep into that. So if you play bishop c5 first, you're giving white the chance to go for the Evans gambit. If you play knight f6 first, which is what happened in the game, you're giving the chance for white to play knight g5, which is the way to go away from those lines where you just allow bishop c5 next and you transpose into the main lines. So knight g5 with this attack on f7, and you need to be careful. You need to know what to do. Now this is what happened in the game, but I wanted to point out that you know, if white plays normally like it happens in the elite, it doesn't really matter if you go bishop c5 first, knight f6 next, or the other way around. But you're allowing one thing or the other. You're allowing the Evans gambit or this knight g5 attack that can lead to a Fegatello attack or or a fried liver, depending what you do. But in both cases, you need to be prepared. That's my main point. Some players play knight f6, then you have to be prepared against knight g5, which is what happened in this game. Some players play bishop c5, then you need to be prepared against the Evans gambit because the Evans gambit may just happen on the next move. So yeah, that's the main road. If you ever want as black to build an e5 repertoire, you need to pick your poison here and see which one you allow. Or of course, if you're Demchenko, you probably are prepared against everything. But okay, knight g5 happened, and this is a key moment because black has one move that makes sense. d5. That's like pretty much the only move. You see in the database there's some bishop c5 that's called the Traxler, and it's not recommended. And if I put it on the board, you see Karpov Belyavsky, you see Anand Belyavsky, so you see Belyavsky doing it. Alexei Shirov doing it, Ivanov. So you can see some even strong players doing it. But, you know, don't do it. Don't do the Traxler. It's bad. It's tricky, but it's bad. So as black, if you do go here, the main point is that you give up f7, but there's some sacrifice ideas on f2, and it's actually incredibly complicated. It's incredibly complicated, but with best play is like +2 for white. But it's very complicated, so there's a lot of theory actually. It's very concrete. But the thing is, you need to be prepared as black, and you need to bet. Basically, this is a gamble. You need to bet that white is not going to be prepared, because if white is prepared, white will have the advantage. So why would you even waste your time preparing this if it's not going to work against a prepared opponent? Yeah, so don't do the Traxler, but some people do. Basically, d5 is the only move, because it's the only way to prevent this attack on f7. So you play d5. Now it takes d5, obviously, a pawn is a pawn, and the main point is black really can't take it back, although some people do. Again, another thing not to do. If you take this pawn, then you're walking into the so-called the famous fried liver attack, which is knight takes f7 here. Arguably d4 is better. At the very least, it's also a very strong move for white. So two very good options for white, but most people like the fried liver because it's very straightforward and you know, very good, because you take the piece. I mean, what else? There's a fork here. You take the piece, then queen f3 comes attacking your knight. The only move that saves the knight, and you have to save the knight because you just gave away your king's safety and the pawn on f7 to grab a piece. You better keep your piece up, otherwise you're gonna be down a pawn and down a king. So yeah, and the only move to save the knight is king e6, which is really ugly. The king is in a really terrible position, and that knight is pinned. And there's a lot of theory here and a lot of players that will go for this with both colors, but I don't think it's a very practical approach from black, so I wouldn't recommend this. Here I like knight e7, but there's also lines with knight b4. They have more or less the same evaluation, but you know, from my perspective as black, if I'm going to walk into this, I want to be as safe as possible from this point on, because I'm trying to survive. And I'm a piece up, yeah, but I'm trying to survive. So I like to go like knight e7, c6, king d6, and try to walk the king to safety. Hey, Manuspurs, thank you. Although I'm showing things that were not the game, so sorry about that. But yeah, that's the fried liver attack, which you don't want to walk into. So here, Anton played the main move, knight a5, which is very well known. And you know, when I first studied this line, because of course knight g5 is a move that, you know, when you start playing chess and you play with, you know, the Italian with bishop c4, well, knight g5 is one of the very first ideas you want to try, obviously. So this is one of the very first lines I've ever studied. And when I came to this position, I remember I only prepared knight a5 because, you know, what else? If my opponent takes on d5, fried liver, yay. And otherwise, my opponent will play knight a5, right? And you see in the database, it's like overwhelmingly more popular knight a5 than any other option. So why would you prepare anything else? Well, that was my mistake, because the first time I faced something else on this position, I was so unprepared. And that happened once. I think it's funny because it happened a long time ago and nobody ever played this move against me anymore. But ever since, I've played it as black many times because it's actually very interesting. It's the move b5. When I first saw it on the board, I couldn't believe it. But actually, if you check with the engine, here we're checking with the database, and yeah, knight a5 is incredibly popular, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's what happened in the game as well. But the problem with this knight g5 line, if I have to mention some problem, first of all, your GM opponent will be prepared in general, because it's not a you know, it's a very direct punch. It's a very direct attempt. It's very concrete. So that's the first thing. You're not gonna catch anyone unprepared here. They're not gonna fall for the fried liver. Let's put it that way. And the other thing is, you need to be prepared against knight f5, which is by far the main move, and it's what you can expect, and it's what happened in this game. But actually, if you look with the engine, there's not much difference between knight f5, b5, or knight d4, which is also another way I managed to lose very quickly in another game I played, because these lines are incredibly dangerous for white. You have the pieces in random spots that you build your coordination against f7, but that coordination is broken, and suddenly you have undefended pieces in the middle of the board. You have moves like bishop g4 coming. Tihon just said good night on Twitter with a picture. So you have moves like bishop g4 coming, and if caught unprepared, this is not so easy for white. It's not the best development ever, and things kind of dangerous with this knight lurking here. So, and the same happens with b5, by the way. After takes, the point is queen takes, hitting the bishop, hitting g2. Again, that knight is hanging on g5, or undefended, and suddenly, well, you need to start solving problems on your own. So yeah, I'm just saying, knight 5 is not the only move you need to prepare against if you go for knight g5. So so yeah, just saying, probably Tihon has good preparation here. Anyway, knight e5. Now bishop e5 is by far the main move, and it's what Tihon did. c6 takes. This is all very normal. I've been on both sides of this position many times, and here it's a very interesting moment because I think many people like the move queen f3. I think it's very popular. You see, for the masters, it's not very popular, but I think if I pick the Lichess database, it's going to be very popular. Queen f3, probably. Yeah, queen f3 is like the top move, and many people like this move, queen f3. Let me go back to the masters database, however. And the point of queen f3 is it pins the pawn, right? Let's put it on the board. It pins the c6 pawn. The problem, well, that's the main point. The problem is black still gets a good position. Let's say after bishop e7, if you want to grab the pawn, then after knight takes, queen takes, bishop d7. Again, you traded your active bishop. The other active piece you have is that knight on g5, which is doing nothing right now. It doesn't have great squares to go to because it can't go to e6, it can't go to e4, it can't go to h3 and allow bishop takes h3. And whenever it goes to f3, it needs to keep an eye on e4 pushes. And even from e4, if black defends e5, it's not like it has a good future from f3. So yeah, not the best knight ever. The queen is attacked, so great initiative for black. And black is 2 pawns down right now, but the amount of initiative and castle next is coming. Like every piece of black is already active, and every piece we have is either not active or very suspiciously placed, and no pawns pushed yet. So we also don't have any space here. So this is very dangerous for white. It's playable. You see games in the elite, but I'm just saying it's very incredibly risky. So that's queen f3 that many people like. But the main move is bishop e2, and that's pretty much the only one I ever prepared. I know some people play bishop a4, which is not a good move. Some people play bishop f1, which is, I think is, if I remember correctly, is one of the engine's suggestions. And I think bishop d3 is also playable according to the engine. I see in the masters database that bishop d3 is actually preferred for the masters. But I'm curious about Lichess. Yeah, it's the second move, interestingly. Yeah, so I guess bishop d3 is, I mean, I've seen this a long time ago. I'm not sure if I ever played bishop d3, but definitely makes sense. You have now a much better retreat square for the knight. And that's what Tihon went for. Now, knight e5, still following the main paths of the database. Knight e5 makes a lot of sense here. It hits the knight, now that this pawn can't be pushed to defend the knight. And it also prepares, maybe, knight f4, which could be potentially annoying. So the knight has to move, and the knight went to f3 now. This is this is an interesting moment because it looked as if bishop d3 was supporting the move knight e4. However, we need to keep an eye on f5. So, for example, if knight e4, which actually there are some games in database, I've never seen this position before, but um, I'm seeing Conquest play this against Howell, and f5 was tried, but actually g6 and knight f4 also were tried here. I would imagine f5 is annoying, and after knight g3, um, yeah, there's some games in the database. Knight f4 and queen f6 seem to score well. Yeah, dangerous position. So the knight goes to f3 in the game. That doesn't allow f5 with a tempo, sort of. Actually, f5 would win a tempo in the sense that it threatens e4, but right now f5 would hang the e5 pawn because then there's queen e2. There's no ping problems. So f5 is not playable here. Black needs to keep an eye on this pawn. And Demchenko played the most natural move, bishop defending and ready to castle. In my opinion, black doesn't have any problems in this position. I think it's very enjoyable for black. The pawn structure is very similar to the Evans gambit, colors reversed. So black is a pawn down, but has a lot of activity in return and space. You have space, you have development, you're about to castle. Most pieces are active, and maybe the only complaint is this knight on a5 that may come to the game or not eventually. It's not the worst knight ever, and it definitely wouldn't be great if you have to bring it back through the b7 square. But many times, c5 happens and it comes back to c6 square, and then that's a much better way. Anywho, what do we have here after bishop d6? Castle and castle, pretty normal. Rook e1. There's some games in the database by Wesley So versus Carlsen, Aronian versus Vidit, Amin Basem against Aronian against Basem, right? We have Navarra Veliavsky, Demchenko with black in one game here. Another game by Demchenko here, and another one, and another one. At least 4 games by Demchenko on this position. So that means that Tihon was probably prepared and had some material against Demchenko on this position. So now I'm curious about this queen c7 move because it took Demchenko some while. Look at the clock, 1:26, and after queen c7 it's 1:19. So it thought for like 7 minutes here. And at the same time, queen c7, you see it's not the first, not the second, or the third. It's the 4th option in the database. So I'm curious now about those other games by Demchenko and whether he played queen c7 or something else. Probably something else, that would be my guess. But let me have a look at those games. In this one, f5 was played, which I think is the main move in the database, by the way. In this one, f5 was played. And in this one, maybe f5 too. f5 was played too, yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. So f5 is the main move in the database. f5 is what Demchenko played in the past. I'm 100% sure Tihon was prepared for f5, yeah. But here Demchenko was clever, clever enough to see. I don't think he was concerned or worried. It was just practical. I mean, I don't think it was a situation of, oh, I'm falling for a preparation. I mean, this is bread and butter for Demchenko. He's played this before. He plays e5 against e4. This is a very well-known position. So, yeah, I don't expect Demchenko to think here, ooh, I'm in trouble. I need to get out of my opponent's prep. I think it was more like, okay, this guy has this completely prepared. let's just try something else because this position is full of life. Let's play a different move. Now queen c7 in my eyes makes a lot of sense because white's threat after rook e1 is to just grab this e5 pawn. So okay, the main move in the database is f5, which is kind of tricky, like tactical, because I don't know what happens after knight takes e5. Let's see what the database says because I never prepared this. Database suggests queen f6 here, or there's one game with queen c7. There are some, yeah, the aforementioned games by Demchenko here, and queen c7. That's not Demchenko. Okay, queen f6, and there are many games here. So this is probably what Tihon prepared, where white grabs a second pawn, but then the knight has to probably retreat, and g5 rar, and black gets quite some action, but would those two pawns be compensated or not? Well, if it's the main move in the database, they're probably compensated, yeah. So very interesting. Now, f5 doesn't defend e5, but that's the threat. The threat is to take the pawn. And okay, f5 grabs space, brings the queen to f6, then g5. So I can see how that has ideas for, you know, a lot of counterplay and play for black. But instead, it's also logical to defend the pawn, to just defend the pawn. So I think it's no mystery that the second move in the database is rook e8. The third move is pinning the knight, so not to allow knight takes e5. And the fourth move is what Demchenko played, queen c7, which also defends the pawn. Very solid. And it also wins a tempo, or, you know, gets one tempo closer to connecting the rooks. So I think queen c7 is very sensible move. The fact that it's the fourth on the database doesn't mean anything, because if you give me this position as black, queen c7, I think it's a very normal candidate move here. But yeah, Demchenko thought for 7 minutes. I don't think queen c7 was prepared by Demchenko. I think he just came up with it on the board because, you know, he spent time, and also I think it's more or less clear that white is prepared here. No, I don't think Demchenko prepared against Tihon specifically, especially given his changing openings and so. So yeah, queen c7, very interesting practical approach, and from this point on, it's just chess, just a game of chess where everybody's out of book, right? Bishop f1, very sensible move, and this took Tihon 20 minutes. Well, the position is dangerous, and I think, oops, f5 is coming anyway. f5, e4. So yeah, how do you develop? So bishop f1 makes a lot of sense. Now you can push d3, bishop g4 on the board, pinning the knight. So creating some practical problems. For example, I think e4 is probably a threat here, because even though the pawn is hanging on e4, with this knight pinned, there's some action going on h2. So I think e4 is a threat. So yeah, h3 Tihon played, which makes a lot of sense. d3 would make some sense too. But h3, asking the bishop, where do you want to keep the pin going to h5, or do you want to be traded? You know, trading would relieve, I think, white's position. So yeah, bishop h5 makes a lot of sense. And now this move, very interesting, d4 by Tihon. I would have played d3 probably, but d4. And now the pawn is not hanging on h2 because we just played h3. So if e4, we just take it. There's no problem on h2 anymore. So yeah, d4, not scared of e4 because we take it. Good move. Just trying to remove these pawns and make, you know, like, look how 3 moves ago or 2 moves ago, before we played bishop f1, it's hard to imagine how to develop these pieces. Right? So bishop f1, h3, and suddenly we can play d4, and yeah, suddenly these pieces can get out much more easily. So yeah, this was the way to go. And e takes d4, only move, I suppose. I mean, I think I said it in the chat. In e4, e5 openings, d4 answered with e takes d4, like it happens like 90% of the times. And in this case, I think the e5 pawn was hanging. Someone said in the chat f5, but f5 seemed like a blunder to me because you can take, and if takes, you can play g4, so there's no ping, and this is hanging. So I don't know. You need to calculate. You know, this king is weak. There may there's some potential for some tactics that I'm missing, but this knight is, I don't know. I would imagine this is good for white. No reason to play f5 here when you didn't play it before. It takes d4, makes a lot of sense. And yeah, here knight bd2 is marked as an inaccuracy, knight bd2, but I think it's a very logical move. I think it's also a very ambitious move, because here the main problem for white is again development, and this knight is pinned. In general, I mean, queen takes d4 allows bishop takes f3, which probably you don't like. g4 is a way to solve the pin that creates a lot of weaknesses for the future. Probably not a good idea. Also, the bishop is going to be great on g6 anyway. And yeah, bishop e2, maybe you block the rook. Knight b2 was played in the game. You block your pieces here. You have to block something. Queen d3 is another way to unping maybe. The problem with queen d3 is you expose your queen in a position where your opponent has a lot of activity and a lot of pieces. I would imagine knight b4, knight f4 to be problems with that queen on d3, and even bishop g6 as well. But knight b2 is ambitious. Why is it ambitious? Because I think what Tihon is trying to do is solve the ping situation without playing g4. That is, he's trying to go knight e4, and if this bishop moves, because you know you're threatening to capture it, then knight g3. I think that's the main idea. Just try to solve the ping without creating weaknesses. Very ambitious, because if you achieve it and you know you're still a pawn up, and if you don't create problems in your position, then you're going to be a healthy pawn up. Now here Demchenko went rook a d8, and knight e4 was played, hitting the bishop. And okay, bishop e7 would have been maybe passive, so bishop e4, very nice tempo. Because now c3 you would take, and bishop d2 I like. Yeah, good move. I mean, we just develop trades in general. I wouldn't be scared of trades if you know if you're a pawn up and lacking space. I think trades make a lot of sense. So here Demchenko played what is marked here as a mistake, queen b6, and the best move was c5. Not an obvious move, but I guess it makes sense, because if white can't play c3, which is a mystery to me, why can't you play c3 against c5? So, this is interesting. I mean, c5 suggested by the engine makes a lot of sense, because that's the way to bring this knight back to the game. However, this bishop is trapped now that you play c5. So I wonder what happens with, oh yeah, the action on the d file. That's what happens. Yeah, never mind. So c3 is not playable, because you take, and suddenly this bishop is pinned. So yeah, this is very good for black. Don't fall for that. So c3 is not playable, and therefore c5 makes sense. Yeah, interesting. So this way black would keep the space advantage, some grip there, and be ready to bring the knight back to the game. And yeah, if white takes here, I imagine knight takes b4, but actually pawn takes may also be tricky. Knight takes b4 seems more natural to me, but pawn takes seems like weakening your pawns, but you know, c2 is under pressure, so I don't really think you can take on d4. There's also discover attacks against your queen, but yeah, this kind of position seems very dangerous for white. That queen under fire, b2 weak, bishop takes f3 ideas. In fact, probably instead of queen takes c2, I would do this first and then queen takes e2. So pawn takes interesting too, yeah, but knight takes also very normal. And if you don't take and you can't go c3, I guess you go a3, forcing black to take. Then you have to take with the knight if you don't want the double pawns. And I don't know, this seems like a very good position for black with knight 4 coming. Again, pawn up though, so if we manage to survive. No, actually we gave the pawn back here already. Never mind. Yeah, we never captured back on d4. I forgot about that. Okay, so bishop b4, bishop d2, and here the engine wanted c5, very interesting. But in the game, queen b6 was played. Defend the bishop, and maybe looking at the b2 undefended pawn. And now Tihon traded, sensible. Anton took with the knight. That helps this rook have some action. But it's weird, this knight, right? Where is this knight going? So a3 happened in the game, which apparently is a mistake. The engine wanted g4. We may see this kind of situation where the engine is like, no, bishop takes f3. So you need an accurate move as white. So the engine marks your move as a mistake, your opponent's move as a mistake, because both of you are missing something. But anyway, a3 seems very normal to me. Then I went to a6. Because if you go but to d5, this queen takes d4 maybe. Well, the engine wanted, in fact, yeah, bishop takes f3. So that's the point. That's why g4 was necessary. g4, then a3. And because of that, a3 is marked as a mistake and knight 6 is marked as a mistake because there's this bishop f3 intermediate here. But yeah, if knight e5, there's probably queen takes d4. Queen takes, knight takes, and if bishop takes now, the intermediate queen takes. And then you don't mind the double pawns, maybe. Maybe, I don't know. This is what I imagine. And this is, you have the bishop, you have the extra pawn. I think white is happy here. But yeah, in the game, knight a6 was tried, which is an interesting square. It may try to come to c5, because then if b4, knight takes e4, but pawn takes hits the queen. Yeah, I'm not sure it can. I don't think you can do that. So these knights are a bit weird now on a6 and a5. And Tihon played b4 here. Look at that, b4, rawr, dominating. Now this knight is dominated. I like it. So the knight has to go back to b7. Not the greatest squares for the knights. I guess black's still fine. I guess black can try c5 next, and up c5, bishop takes a6. Yeah, not so easy. You may have to slowly maneuver your king, your knights here. Yeah, a3, b4, very nice play by Tihon here. And now knight g3, finally completing the plan to solve the ping without weakening at all this pawn structure here. I like it. Bishop g6 was played, which is a mistake. The engine said bishop takes f3. I mean, bishop takes f3 you don't want to play, because you could have played bishop takes f3 at any point. But of course black doesn't want this, because you don't double pawns, you don't win anything, you just give your bishop for a knight. Now white has a bishop. This is such a clearly good position for white. But as black, yeah, if you don't take, well, your position may be a bit suspicious, but at least you have to keep the bishop, right? I think the engine says question mark here. I disagree. I think bishop g6 is perfectly human. And knight e5. Knight e5, very nice move. And we're about to hit the end of the game. Knight e5 hitting the bishop on g6, but also with some nice e4 ideas. Yeah, and even some pressure. Oh, this knight takes c6 is a threat also. I mean, maybe not a threat, but you can go knight takes c6, queen takes, and b5. That would be funny. Maybe it's just a trade. Maybe your pawn on a6 doesn't make a lot of sense later. But it's a pawn. It's a pawn you win. So yeah, potential for some interest. This knight on e5 has a lot of potential. Um, and of course, this bishop is also very dominated, like very dominated. Like I would imagine h4, h5 being a very annoying plan, because if you have to save your bishop pushing any of these pawns, then knight takes g6 is strong because you create weaknesses. See what I mean? Like in the game, knight d6 was played and a draw was declared. But yeah, my point is, if you go h4 here, which again the game stopped here, but let's say you go h4, I'm threatening h5, sort of trapping the bishop. Not trapping because now the knight is here defending f5, so h5 you could still save the bishop with bishop f5, but you lose the bishop for the knight, which is not great. So, but the only way to prevent that would be to push this guy or this guy, and then knight takes g6. h4 was the engine suggestion. Nice. I mean, I see this bishop is in a bit of a pickle. And I don't know, maybe Demchenko was going to play knight f5 here. I guess that makes sense. I guess that could potentially be the idea of knight e6, because otherwise, yeah, if you push this pawn, knight takes g6. If you push this pawn, knight takes g6. And so let's put it on the board. If you push this pawn trying, h5, bishop h7, then this is much weaker than the pawn back on h7. And the same with the other pawn. So this is the point. Now here black would love to have the pawn back on f7. This is weaknesses on the light squares. So it was quite risky to not take the draw. Well, I don't know. Here Tihon took the draw, right? I mean, if I'm playing white in this position against someone my level, I wouldn't take the draw. Because I think I'm already playing for, let's say, okay, definitely not playing for only 2 results because the position is open and tactical and many things can happen. But I'm certain I have a good position as white. So yeah, against someone my level, I would not take the draw. Now, if I'm playing Nemchenko, yeah, I would take the draw. If I'm playing any okay, you can argue that Tihon is 2300, so 300 points difference. If I'm playing someone 300 points above me, that would be an international master. If I'm playing this position as white against an international master, imagine Eric Rosen, for example, he offers a draw. Yeah, I would probably take it. I would probably take the draw here, unless for some reason, tournament situation or whatever, it's the last round. I have nothing to play for. Then I may just keep playing. But yeah, round 4 of a tournament, it's such a great result to take a draw here. Who wouldn't accept a draw? Yeah. Yeah, I would just take it. It's a victory already. It's like, you played that great that your super GM opponent had to offer a draw on move 22. Yeah. I would definitely take it. Yeah. So h4, interesting. But yeah, I imagine knight d6 was intending knight f5, which may still solve the problem of the bishop, maybe, potentially. Because if you go h5, takes the bishop has f5. So maybe some concrete calculation shows that this is actually even bad for black, because if you move the bishop again, then bishop d3 comes, and suddenly with this pawn helping on h5, maybe white has a strong attack here. I don't know. Which is also something to bear in mind whenever you have a position where, yeah, let's put that on the board again. Whenever you have a position where your opponent has pieces misplaced on the other side of the board, like in this game, we saw this knight on a5, and later on we saw this knight on a5, knight on a6. That's very dangerous because those pieces are not helping the defense. So if at some point, let's say this bishop goes away from this diagonal. Let's say like here, if I would imagine here the best move is g6 or something weird like that. But if you go to another diagonal, then suddenly there's some attack here. Um, and the only way to expel this knight would be to create more weaknesses on the light squares, and then h7 is a target. Like if it's black to play, like f6 you may lose on the spot. I don't know. Also c6 is hanging. Like I know I'm making bad moves here, but I'm trying to make a point that maybe even bishop takes h7 wins here, but queen e4. I mean, queen e4 f5 you need to still calculate, but it's such a pleasant attack suddenly. So yeah, chances are that maybe you could go h5 here and still have an attack because black's pieces are not helping the defense. So actually trading this knight, allowing this trade is good because it removes one defender on this side of the board and suddenly you have a strong attack. So yeah, I guess knight f5 seemed like the idea from black's perspective, but maybe I don't know what the engine says, Karmar. I don't know if h5 is good or bad here. Another option is to trade this knight directly and say, okay, um, well, here we can go crazy with g4. I would consider g4. And the main point is similar, is I want this bishop out of this diagonal so I can start attacking. But yeah, I guess g4 is really, you have your engine off. Nice. That's how it should be. But yeah, we don't need to go crazy with g4. I guess queen f3 makes more sense, or queen h5. Queen f3, I like it more because that prevents bishop g6. Queen h5 maybe still bishop g6, and because these pawns didn't move, sorry, queen h5, bishop g6, because these pawns didn't move, then knight takes g6 is not so annoying for black. So king f3, that prevents bishop g6 due to h5, the bishop is trapped. So the bishop has to go to another diagonal, or you have to play g6, which you don't want to, and then you can start your attack. So this, in principle, of course, calculation is required, and you know, a super GM is a super GM, but it feels like a very dangerous position for black. Like, you know, if your best shot, because he just played 96, if your best resource here is 95, well, you may just be trading an important defender, and yeah, I like white's attack here, but yeah, I don't know. Um, good result, very good result for Tihon here. I feel like black could potentially be in a bit of trouble in this position. The first developed in Spain. Yeah, okay, guys. Now I'm gonna leave it here for sure. It was nice to see this game. I think probably perfect game by Tihon, right? I don't see any. Well, no, we saw that knight bd2 was an inaccuracy. Let's have a look at what you disabled computer analysis. Yay! Uh, let's have a quick look at. So by disabling that, I don't see also the summary of inaccuracies and so on. So let's enable it again. Here it is. So yeah, Tihon, one inaccuracy, one mistake. 90% accuracy. Boo, terrible. I had more accuracy on my match. And Danchenko, one inaccuracy, two mistakes, and one blunder. Queen b6 was a blunder. Tomorrow is game 5, yes. And I don't know much about this tournament, by the way, but since we're here, before I wrap up, November 5th to November 13th. November 13th, is that on Sunday? All right. So can you see my screen? Can you see the rounds? Let me put the camera here. Okay, so we have, this was today, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? So one round each day at 9 a.m. I think this is my time, right? I think it's showing my local time, very likely. Yeah, because it says in 16 hours. So let me do the math. 16 and 16, 32 minus 24, 8. Yeah, it's my time. And then a rest day. I don't see a rest day. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Right? So games are at 16 Central European time. That's 4 p.m. Central European time. after tomorrow. No, they play every day. Manus Spurs. They play, today it's 8. They play on 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So, yeah, games are at 9 a.m. Minnesota time. That's 4 p.m. in Europe, except Sunday it's 6 hours earlier. That's going to be tough here because it's 3 a.m. But it's going to be like 9 a.m. for, sorry, 10 a.m. in Europe. So Sunday, 10 a.m., very normal because, it's Sunday, end of the tournament. Yeah, the dates are consecutive numbers. I think it's yeah. I was confused too, Manus Spurs. All right, so yeah, I won't follow these games very likely during the week, but maybe neither I will on Friday. But definitely for the last 2 rounds. No, sorry, for the last round, for the round on Saturday, I'm able to follow. I could even consider streaming like I did on the previous tournament, just streaming the second to last round, which may be decisive for the results. I think that would be nice. Yeah, that would be nice. I'm gonna plan on that. Yeah, and just follow it live. I think the commentaries can be deeper that way. We have more time, and um, and yeah, unfortunately, I think 3 a.m. will be too much for me, especially given that I usually wake up around 5 a.m. So I mean, 3 a.m. it's like sleeping for sure. Um, Tomorrow we'll need the fourth point. Yeah, we'll see. I'll keep an eye on the rounds, but hopefully, yeah, by Saturday we can have an exciting match because it's going to be the last 2 rounds. And if he makes a good tournament, and we all expect him to do it, I think he will have some chances to, I don't know, fight for prizes, for rating, for norms, definitely. Who will play tomorrow? Tomorrow he plays, unfortunately, he plays an 1800 because there is the accelerated using the Baku method, as you saw there. So yeah, unfortunately, he's playing against someone below him, technically below him. In fact, Tihon has 3 points and the opponent has 3.5. But Tihon has virtually 4 points. And unfortunately, he's not paired against someone with virtual 4, but 3.5. So he's going down in the Swiss pairings, which is unfortunate. So he's playing, yeah, this 1800 called Astner Sebastian from Germany, which I don't know. If we're curious, we can quickly Google. um, he's not happy about it. I wouldn't be. I mean, he's doing a good tournament. This guy probably um, he's young. Goer, hey, thanks for the follow. So born in 2004. We don't know the exact month, but we can guess he's around 18 years old. So young, but not as young. And yeah, 1800 in pretty much the 3 ratings. He may be underrated. He's scoring very well, 3.5 out of 4 against 2100s and 2000s. I mean, he didn't have like strongest contention. Like Tihon is going to be his stronger opponent. I would expect Tihon to win anyway. But yeah, I'm not concerned about Tihon not scoring this game. But rather the rating not helping, right? Because yeah, this will definitely drag Tihon's performance and average opponent's rating. But on the other hand, he got a 2600 today, and he drew. That's much better than, I don't know, a 2400, for example. So yeah, one thing for the other, and hopefully he'll get stronger opponents in the next rounds. Yeah, he plays black tomorrow. Let's see that Berlin. Well, I think it's good to get black against the 1800 and white against the 2600, and not the other way around. So so let's not cry that much about this opponent's rating. I think it's going well. It's going well. We'll see. Um, the day is coming closer when he beats such GMs. Yeah, I agree with that, Karmar. One thing I'm seeing in Tihon's play lately, the very few games I followed, is he's dynamic, he's sharp, he's tactical, but he still takes draws. Like, he still doesn't go crazy, which is good. It's a sign of growth. Uh, so what I'm trying to say is, if he went maybe a bit crazier, he he could have he could have had maybe some victory here and there against Super GM, like this. Like today, he had a great position, but on the other hand, by by being this solid, and solid, I say it with three quotation marks on each side, because again, he's sharp, tactical, and aggressive and dynamic in general. So it's not like he's playing boringly and solid, but he's having solid performances. That's what I mean, and he's not going super crazy. So had he gone super crazy, maybe he could have had more victories, but also more losses. Um, the way he's progressing, instead, I think once he beats Wang, he's gonna start beating a lot. That's how I feel about it. I feel like his progress is being very steady, and that's a good sign, I think, for a champion, right? Um, Daigoer, hello, good evening. Sean here on another account, still in Canada. Uh, Hello, Sean. I've never been to Canada in my life. I think you're confusing me with someone. Anyway, uh, I was wrapping up here. Tomorrow I'll be back. Uh, oh yeah, that's true. Minnesota is close. It's we have little Canada here. Um, yeah, tomorrow I'll be doing end games. Finally, last week I couldn't. Um, I think I have the material ready anyway. So tomorrow we're gonna see some end games on the topic of knight versus bishop, which is a very, 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 very interesting and important endgame topic. We're going to see a lot of different positions. It's going to be interesting, instructive, or instructional, whatever the right word is. And we're going to cover that for at least 2 weeks, because there are like two major topics or subtopics on knight versus bishop. One is when the knight wins, or let's say knight and pawn versus bishop, and the other one is bishop and pawn versus knight. So which side is the stronger side? I'm gonna split those in two at least, but sometimes these streams get really long, so I may split it even more. But it's one of the most interesting endgames to learn, because as you know, knight and bishop are completely different pieces, and yet they're valued the same, 3 points. So I think it goes to the essence of chess, understanding the difference between these two pieces, because they're worth the same, but they're completely different. So understanding the differences, and when is one better than the other, I think that teaches a lot about chess in general, not just endgames. So yeah, we'll explore that topic, and hopefully I will also learn from it. Yeah, so that's going to be tomorrow, and I'll see you at the same time as usual, which is going to be 1:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. That is, if my math is correct, that's 8:30 p.m. in Europe. And yeah, thanks guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye bye. Take care.